Good evening. I was looking at my calendar this past week, and I have a little over a month till I go back to school. So pretty much half of my time here is come and gone. I just want to say, I feel like I say this every time I get up, but I just really appreciate you. Had every intention of coming here. There's not a youth minister here full time, so I had every intention of coming here, and through Jesus blessing the young people and blessing y'all. But the opposite has happened. You have blessed me, and I've learned so much in being here just in the short time. And you've got some great kids here at this congregation. Some really good young people. Before I get into my lesson, this past Thursday I went to Maywood Christian Camp. Okay, and it's the last night. Usually on the last night there are lots of responses. There's about 200 kids at this camp, and the invitation song is sung, and literally every single person in the stands gets up one after the other and goes down front. And I'm thinking, surely not all 200 people are going down. But I look and I see groups of people going out everywhere. And there'd be a person in the middle, and everyone standing around, touching them, saying that they love them. It was a reminder for me. Something that I learned from a group of 8 to 18-year-olds, that when someone comes down front, it's not just the elder's job or the preacher's job to come down and talk with them. It's Christians. It's our job to encourage them. So that was free. That's something that I learned this week. Just a little reminder. It's crazy what some kids can do to remind us. All right, Mark chapter 5 is where we're going to be tonight. Mark chapter 5. If you weren't here this morning, you missed a good lesson. Mr. Jeff made me nervous. He started off in chapter 4. I thought he was going to go through my stuff in chapter 5, but he didn't. So Mark chapter 5, we'll be looking at verses 25 through 34. I'll go ahead and read those. Mark chapter 5, verses 25 through 34. And there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years, and who had suffered much under many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard the reports about Jesus, and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his garment, for she said, "If I touch even his garments, I will be made well." And immediately the flow of blood dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. And Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone out from him, immediately turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my garments?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing around you, and yet you say, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, and fell down before him and told him the truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." First off, let's look at the context of this. You have chapter 4, if you look back, we have the healing of the man you have where Jesus calms the storm, where we read about today. And then in the first part of chapter 5, Jesus heals the man with the demon, okay? And he is sent out. And then after that, we have a story of Jairus and Jairus' daughter. Jairus came to Jesus and said, "Hey, my daughter's sick. Can you heal her?" And in the middle of that story, we have this little snippet of the woman. Some people believe that it's because it happened chronologically. He was going towards this man's daughter, and then this thing happened with the woman. But Mark does this a lot. He has stories, and in the middle of them, he has another little story. Why? The point is it backs up the original passage. So looking at the other one, Jairus came to Jesus, asked him to heal his daughter, and then this thing with the woman happens. And then afterwards, he goes to his house, and his daughter has passed away. And then Jesus said, paraphrasing, hey bro, I got this, and then he goes in and heals his daughter. So usually, when people talk about this little snippet, they talk about the faith of the woman and the faith of Jairus. But that's not what we're talking about. I want to talk about the garment that Jesus had. I look at the story, and I think of this woman, and I say, how did she know that even touching his garment, not even touching him, would save her? And it says in verse 28, for she said, if I touch even his garments, I will be made well. How does she know that? Well, if we look back at the context, chapter 5, Jesus heals a man with a demon. If he can heal a man with a demon and put him in 2,000 pigs, also, by the way, I was talking to my friend. He's a cow farmer, okay? He has 600 head of cow. He said if his 600 cows ran into a lake and drowned themselves, someone would be losing their job, okay? So I think of the pig farmer and how someone who was watching the pigs lost their job. But she knew. She had seen Jesus have compassion and heal other people. You go back to Mark chapter 2 and looking. Jesus heals the paralyzed man. So I look at Jesus' garment and I try to parallel that to us. What is our garment? What is the thing that we put on? And to do that, we have to go back to what Braden read to us in Colossians. Colossians chapter 3. Colossians chapter 3, and we're reading verses 12 through 17. Colossians 3, verses 12 through 17. Put on then, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other, as the Lord has forgiven you. So you must also forgive. And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you are called in one body. And be thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, teaching and admonishing one another in all wisdom, singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, with thankfulness in your hearts to God. And whatever you do, in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. So what is our garment? What do we put on? Christ. Christ is our garment. And all of these attributes that we read here, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, all of these things that Christ showed to other people. We look at the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, all of these things. So all of this has led up to four questions that I'd like to ask. And the first question is, have you even put on your garment? And do you put on your garment each and every day? We all know what we must do to put on the garment of Christ. Be baptized into him and be raised. But do you do it every day? Like me, when I wake up every morning, I put on the name, or I have the name Joshua Hester. Okay? That is my name. I represent me and my family and everything that I do. But I put on Christ's name every morning when I wake up. And I represent him. My second question is, do you put on your garment and take it off? Put it on, take it off, put it on, take it off, whenever you want to. whenever you please? Is the name of Christ just something that you do at church, or something that you do around your parents, or something that you do around people that you know are from church? I think of people my age and how they have a cussing problem sometimes. And I ask them, well, do you cuss around your parents? No. So sometimes we have a tendency to form to people that we're around instead of living as Christ. So do you put it on and take it off whenever you please? My third question is, are people reaching for your garment? Go with me to Acts chapter 16. Acts chapter 16, verses 25 through 34. This is a story that we've heard a bajillion times, or most of us, of the Philippian jailer. Acts chapter 16, verses 25 through 34. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the prisoners were listening to them. And suddenly there was a great earthquake, so that the foundations of the prison were shaken. And immediately all the doors were opened, and everyone's bonds were unfastened. When the jailer woke and saw that the prison doors were open, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself, supposing that the prisoners had escaped. But Paul cried out with a loud voice, "Do not harm yourself, for we are all here." And the jailer called for lights and rushed in, and trembling with fear, he fell down before Paul and Silas. Then he brought them out and said, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" And they said, "Believe in the Lord Jesus, and you will be saved, and you and your household." And they spoke the word of the Lord to him and to all who were in his house. And he took them the same hour of the night and washed their wounds, and he was baptized at once. And he and all his family. Then he brought them up into his house and set food before them. And he rejoiced, along with his entire household, that he had believed. So what made this man want to be saved? Number one, he just had a very traumatic experience, okay? He was about to kill himself, and then Paul was like, no, don't do that. So emotions are very high. But also he saw something different in Paul and Silas. Everyone else would have run out, but they didn't do that. And he saw that in them. He saw that they were different. So it goes back to my question, are people reaching for your garment? Are you living the life to where people want to be around you? Do they want what you have in Jesus? This past Wednesday night, in class, we did a little thing that was different. I said, if God could write you a letter, what would it say? And we had many people talk, but there was one person who I see as a person of great faith, and they said in their letter, it started off, "I love you." That was the first sentence of everyone's letter, is "I love you." Haven't heard from you in a while. I wish you would talk to me. I miss you. And that was an amazing moment to see someone be able to look inside and see what they needed to work on and see things that they needed to change within their lives. Mine was, I hope you keep things more about God and not about yourself. Know that I love you. I know your weaknesses, but keep fighting through your weaknesses. I have sent you to Leoma with a purpose. That was mine. And that brings me to my last question of the night. When it comes down to it, and you take a moment to look at yourself, would you reach for your own garment? Would you look at yourself and say, that's who I want to be? That's what I want to be about? Or would you change some things? Sometimes we keep ourselves so busy that we don't ever have to look at ourselves. We're going this way and that way and filling the void with noise and We never look at ourselves because it's hard. It's really hard to look at ourselves and try to change ourselves. If there's anything that you feel like you need to change, or if we can help you with anything, please come as we stand and as we sing.